All right, in the wake of the flood crisis in New South Wales and South East Queensland, there's been a lot of finger pointing in terms of who should have done what and, more importantly, when. And while these questions will no doubt be replaced by new issues in the next news cycle nationally, for people in areas like northern New South Wales, the impact of the floods will be felt for many months, even years, and they want answers still. My next guest was very vocal last week about the desperate need for more immediate help on the ground with the clean-up. It concerned local resident and Neighbours and Underbelly actor Madeline West so much, she's now announced that she'll pause her acting career, if given the chance, to run for a parliamentary seat next year at the New South Wales state election. Now, that's one drastic transition. Madeline West joins me now from a very waterlogged Ballina. Madeline, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on the show, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Hey, how are the communities up there in northern New South Wales holding up? They've had a long road behind them, a tough road, but then a long road ahead of them as well.
Absolutely. I don't think you can understate that. The communities are incredible. The communities have been the driving force in response to these floods. But realistically, the floods are just the tip of the iceberg. We are faced with seismic problems in the northern rivers. It's a beautiful place. You've all seen it and appreciated it on Instagram, but the problems run way below the surface, much more than skin deep. So right now, our communities are still the number one point of contact in responding to the flood. They have banded together and they know what to do, but they have been failed cataclysmically by those who elected them and put them in positions of power.
Well, Ballina in particular had to fend for itself entirely during these floods. What kind of support should the area have got? And then I'll ask you the supplementary question, what more is required?
Well, I think it's about long-term planning now, Chris. We needed preemptive, responsive attack from the beginning. We needed a plan. Frankly, we needed to be declared a national disaster as soon as it became apparent that there was no way out. I'm talking about videos of water over rooftops, over treetops. At what point was there ever a question about this being a national disaster? And we needed state-level support. For too long, the civilians were being asked to respond to these cataclysmic disasters. It is never within their auspice to do that. For too long, local councils have been asked to be responsible for putting together fund management plans, bushfire management plans. Once again, it's beyond their capacity. It rests with the state. There are 3 tiers of government that need to respond to disasters like this, and it just has not functioned. The machine is broken.
How realistic is it to expect rescue crews to turn up on your doorstep, though, when floods rise? The history of natural disasters has been a community effort. It's not always the case that we put our hands up and wait for the SES to turn up.
Absolutely. And I think on that level, on a state level, organisations like the SES, our fireys, who are absolutely incredible, are volunteer-based. So there's an opportunity there for them to coordinate the citizens in making not just a preemptive strike, but how to manage the aftermath. So it's coordinated. On the streets, there were 2 million people wandering around looking a bit dazed. The response was too hodgepodge. I myself, who was on the ground in Lismore, in Ballina, Korakai, Evans Head, the entire area all the way up to Tweed, was waiting for someone to come in with a big loudspeaker on a truck, Chris, and say, OK, you look strong, you go over there, make sure the roofs are fortified. You corral the citizens, make sure that they are safe. You start looking at the efforts to get people to safety, and if they're not safe, manage ways to get in. At one point when I was trying to cross a road that was absolutely flooded, I met some SES officers who'd come in from Adelaide and they were doing the right thing, but they simply didn't have the equipment on hand to pull the trees that were blocking the road, that were causing the floodwaters to rise. So they had to go back to headquarters. So they completed a 4-hour trip for nothing. If you had a coordinated effort that utilised the education and the knowledge of locals with an upper tier management who is running the rescue efforts in those desperate areas that need helicopters, that need cranes, that need the heavy machinery, suddenly you have an effort that is complete, comprehensive, coherent, and it gets the job done quickly. I know we worry about budgets. I know we worry about, well, whose responsibility is to call it out. That's why we need a national plan. We need a disaster management plan, and it needs to start not just at the grassroots, but at the top tiers of government. And that's what I want to institute. That's what I want to be a part of. But first of all, for me, it starts with focusing on the well-being of my community.
I tell you what, you've got extraordinary conviction. You deliver so superbly, better than some of the politicians we have on here far too often. So at Tilted Politics, have you got a thick skin?
I've got a very thick skin, Chris. I come from the entertainment industry. Crikey. Now, I would say some people might say you're an actor, but for me, this is an extension of what I already do. I care. And as far as I'm
considered... wasn't the flood disaster which prompted you to make that decision? Or had you been thinking about it?
It's a long stream of mismanagement. Like I said earlier, the floods are just the tip of the iceberg, but they're an excellent demonstration of some of the issues that my community, the Northern Rivers, faces. It looks good on Instagram.
Yeah.
It looks great on Instagram, but there are some things that we really need. We need sustainable economic development. We need affordable housing. We need new streams of income in the area that is going to allow people to fund themselves to live here. The area is renowned for its incredible hospitality, and the people who service that, the cleaners, the baristas, they can't afford to live in the Northern Rivers anymore.
Someone's got to sign you up immediately, fair income. But how do you fit in a political life as a single mum with 6 kids, Madeline?
I think if you want something done, you ask someone who's busier, and who is busier than a mum of 6. And yes, I am an actor, but so is Volodymyr Zelensky. So if we're going to use that argument, you can chuck that straight out the window. But most importantly, Chris, I have a platform. A platform is a unique thing. It's an ability for me to use my voice to represent the voices that are commonly voiceless, and that's in my community.
You will do very, very well.
I want to be the change that I want to see, Chris, and I'm determined to do it. And yes, I am tired. My whole community is, but I am impassioned, because the number one reason for me to do this is that I have a family. They live in this community. I want them to flourish in this community. I want this community to flourish. And if it takes me putting my hand up, then by God, I will.
Well done. Well said. You're a powerhouse. Madeline West, I was a fan before. I'm double the fan I was from previous times. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck.
Thank you so much. And I can guarantee, Chris, this is not the first time that we're going to be having a conversation.